Cyber attacks targeting the U.S. government are on the rise. A new report by the Obama administration found more than 60,000 security breaches against the federal government last year. That's up 35% since 2010. Networks at the White House, State Department, and Energy Department have all been breached. Security experts warn even more cyber attacks are expected. High-profile hacks on private industry like Sony are also now being considered a matter of national security. Let's delve a little bit more into the implications of the Sony cyber attack. Joining us now in the studio is PJ Crowley. He's the former spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State and an expert on U.S. foreign policy. Well, let's go back before we get to Sony. This report by the Obama administration. Lots of attacks on the federal government. You were at the State Department. How serious was this as an issue then, and how's it changed over time now, would you say?
Well, it is a growing issue not only for governments being able to protect information, but also it's increasingly a challenge for private industry, since much of what we value as a society rests in private hands. Sony would be a good example, Target, Home Depot as well. So not only does the government need to be more vigilant in protecting networks that we rely upon for a lot of functions, but the private industry needs to step up its game. I think that's part of what the president's message was today.
Were you surprised at how hard he was on Sony? He really kind of came out and said they made a big mistake.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, one can understand the box that Sony was in, particularly where mall operators, theater owners were reluctant to take on the risk and liability. But I think the mistake they made was announcing that the movie would not open without having an alternative plan.
You worked at the State Department. You know that things are happening all around the world all the time, and it's putting out this fire and that fire. And you and I earlier today were talking about ISIL. There's so many issues out there. Cybersecurity doesn't seem to, it kind of ends up on the radar every once in a while, kind of scores here, there. Does Sony change the game in any respects in terms of what happened there, the fact that the President of the United States now talking about a major U.S. corporation being affected?
I mean, it's not a new issue. These are issues that the United States formally has raised with a number of countries, from China, Russia, Ukraine. Sometimes it's hard to know you're being attacked, but whether that's a government action, a cyber free agent, or a criminal enterprise, sometimes you don't know that. But clearly, these are things that are taking on greater responsibility as part of diplomacy. I think it is very unusual. This is the first time that the President of the United States has directly pointed to a foreign country and said, basically, this is an act of aggression against us, and we will respond at a time and in a manner of our choosing.
How? How do you think they can respond?
Well, obviously, he said proportional. The United States has cyber capabilities as well. I think it's more likely to be covert action than overt action. Obviously, North Korea is the North Korean regime may or may not have a great attachment to reality. Clearly they were concerned about how their leader was being depicted in this film. So you have to find a way, but they are an entity with nuclear weapons, and they are used to escalating conflicts. So you've got to find a way that North Korea pays a price. The North Korean leadership will feel some pain, but sending a message that crime does not pay, I think, without necessarily taking a challenge and making it worse, that's the needle that the president and the administration has to try to thread.
Does the U.S. government, though, have to change its philosophy, just in the sense that you and I, as I mentioned, talking about ISIL, looking at that as a military, you were saying they really kind of need to look at it as a politics issue, but take it a step further. We're living in an entirely different era now, so much online, and I've heard a lot of experts say that the U.S. really hasn't looked at this seriously enough in terms of attacking this problem, that we're getting attacked quite a bit here in the United States, and this is not the only country attacked. Is this something where the United States needs to pour more money into this?
Well, there's a lot of money going into it. It is a rising issue. It's an asymmetric weapon. So a country that has little capability, like North Korea does, can find a way to attack a major power, and the fingerprints are a little bit murky. So yes, this can be an equalizer. So it does require a decisive response. But I think that part of the challenge here is a matter of a lot of activity going on in government, but there's not necessarily yet the connective tissue so that government can cooperate and both parties feel at ease in sharing information and finding a way to raise standards. There's been some legislation proposed in Congress. Some of it just passed, not all of it. John McCain this week called for comprehensive, cyber legislation. I think there's more in the way of information sharing, but as a matter, we need to raise the bar in terms of what normal standards for care and protection of networks will be. There's a cost to that, and so companies, for example, that are driven by the bottom line, this is a major economic and political challenge for the entire country, government, and the private sector. Yeah, and Sony, I think, is going to be a wake-up call.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of rethinking, not just from a government standpoint, as you point out, business as well. Thanks so much, PJ Crowley. Always a delight to have you on the broadcast.